Hey guys, welcome back. Tisha here, back for another 50 years in polygamy read along, book read, chapter read. If you have not done so already, please like the video. It helps me in the algorithm. Let's begin. This is chapter 9, Foes and Shame. The year is 1963. Along with my maturing age came more responsibility. I made simple meals, did the dishes, cleaned the whole house, and did the laundry with mom or alone. I helped my brother Daryl set up hundreds of chairs in our new garage, which served as the group's church, and then I played outside as long as possible. I really didn't mind having those duties, but I knew unless someone realized I hadn't finished one of my chores, I would not be noticed or missed at all. Her family has always made her feel like she doesn't matter because she often talks about how she's not missed when she's not somewhere. One long weekend break from school, I decided to prove my point. Friday morning, I ran and walked 12 miles to Draper City to stay with a new friend. Once I got there, I told her mom if it was okay with her, I could stay over for 2 nights and then ride back home with them when their family drove to Murray for Sunday afternoon sacrament meeting. Sunday evening, Dad asked angrily, "Why didn't you clean the house and help prepare for church today, Sophia? Where have you been all day?" "When did you notice I was gone?" I asked. "When we noticed the house hadn't been clean," he complained. So they didn't even realize she was gone until it came time for her chores. And for him to so easily admit that makes me kind of look at her dad side eye as well. It wasn't at all presentable for the church. "I knew, Dad," I replied. The magnitude of my disappointment reflected in my voice. I knew I wouldn't be missed by you, Mom, or anyone else unless my jobs weren't done. I've been gone for 3 days, and no one even noticed or missed me until this morning. What a way to tell your dad, like, I knew that you wouldn't notice me until it came to time for me to clean. Wow. The sadness in my dad's eyes melted my heart. He got down on one knee and said, "I am so sorry, honey. Who is supposed to be watching over you while your mother is working and sleeping?" "I don't know, Dad. I haven't known forever." Most of the children in our community love the pond between our home and Uncle Marvin's with its muddy water, willows, tadpoles, and frogs. When the adults filled it with gravel and dirt to create a big parking lot for our growing congregation, the children felt betrayed and devastated. It seemed every opportunity for fun and adventure was eventually ruined by the growth of our fundamentalist community. Toward the front of the parking lot field and fairly close to the main street, which was no longer a dead end, my cousin Craig and his wife Charlene built a simple 3-bedroom home for their rapidly growing family. Mom was a friend and a spiritual guide to Charlene, who often confided her deepest concerns to my mother. She would hold Charlene's hands while she cried. As with most curious children, I often tuned in to their conversations, even though some of them made me cringe. I don't understand why adults aren't aware of when their children are around. I know that there's times where I have left out of my apartment and went and sat in the car to have certain conversations because I didn't want my child to hear them. But then again, that's just me. I'm always fertile, having one baby after another, faster than I can physically or emotionally handle, Charlene told my mom one day. I want him to leave me alone. He won't even stay away from me while I'm pregnant. Ooh. So because she's supposed to keep having these babies as long as she's blessed to have babies, she's being tortured. She's probably depressed, probably has all types of postpartum, and God knows what else. She's probably tired, lots of fatigue, because she is forced to have these babies. Being nearly 11, I had a good idea what Charlene was talking about, and I winced. Little by little, I figured out what the birds and the bees had to do with how babies came to grow inside of the womb. Pregnancy didn't come about from that great big juicy wedding kiss or the wedding ceremony like I used to think. And God didn't just make a new baby magically appear after a mother spent hours of agony in a bedroom and then suddenly emerge looking much thinner. I don't know just how I figured it out, but I learned that condition came about by the thing you do that mom says is evil and disgusting if you're not married, but wonderful and beautiful if you are. So I was puzzled. Charlene and Craig were married, so it was supposed to be wonderful and beautiful. Yet Charlene told mom that she felt plagued by her oversexed husband. Those conversations made me despise Craig more than I already did. I hated the way he looked at me and the other little girls. I hated the way I felt if he was home when I had to help at Charlene's house. When they moved next door, mom assigned me to be Charlene's personal maid and assistant. So y'all keep having these babies. And as a result, you're punishing these kids that aren't asking to be here by making them not be able to enjoy childhood and to help the other people who keep procreating because this is what you say they have to do. After school and on weekends, and whenever Charlene needed a housekeeper or a babysitter, I was expected to be her servant. It was okay at first, but I started to resent my lack of playtime and all of my hard work for which I rarely received a word of appreciation. Exactly. Let this child be a child. But she needs your help, mom charged whenever I tried to ditch my responsibilities. You know you should always place others and their needs before yourself. I do not agree with that. Self-care is real, people. You are a servant of the Lord, and by serving others, you are serving him. Now put on your shoes, Sophia, and get over there now. I helped Charlene with housework and with her children so much that I felt like I practically raised her first 2 or 3 children as if they were my responsibility. And now she was expecting again. Based on mom's convictions and example, I believed it was my job to help Charlene fulfill her parental and household duties. So I tried to be sweet and happy about it. One day, I finished cleaning their house and was nearly done with the dishes when Craig came in the kitchen door. The look in his eyes completely drained me. Oh, please, 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 please. Then, as if he had picked up on my loathing, he made his body brush against mine as he passed by. I felt diminished and sickened. I should have just left, but my obligatory respect for adults and my codependency kicked in. For a few seconds, I stood in the kids' room where they were watching Elmer Fudd hunt Bugs Bunny with his double-barrel shotgun. I stood by the chair Craig was sitting in and tried to find the courage to tell him I was leaving, even if Charlene wasn't back yet. Without a word, he grabbed my arm and forced me down onto his lap. He made sure my legs straddled his. I tried to get up, but he held on tightly to my forearms. What in the bleep, 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 bleep? What is wrong with these men? Why is it that they're so emboldened to sit here and go after little girl after little girl after little girl? It's sickening. I tried to get up, but he held tightly onto my forearms. At first, I thought Craig was just teasing me and he'd let up in a second, but he didn't. Then both of his hands crawled under my blouse and up my newly developing breasts. I was scared to death. Yet I've been told over and over to respect adults. This is why you have to have these conversations with your children, because when you leave room for there to be secrets, when you leave room for there to not be knowledge, you give further and further access to these disgusting predators to prey on your kids. We gotta do better. Craig's slimy hands were on my body where they didn't belong. I hated him. Is this love? Is he loving me? I'd ask myself. Maybe I should like this because he does. I didn't. I felt terrible and ashamed. While he squirmed beneath me, he held me so tight against his chest with his arms wrapped around me and his hands on my tiny breast that I started crying. If I scream, his kids will turn around. If I jump up and run away, he might hurt me. If I run, that might hurt his feelings. He'll feel bad. He'll get mad at me. None of this makes any sense. I was crying when I finally broke away from Craig and ran to the bathroom. My vomit splashed back onto my face as it hit the water in the toilet. I could hardly breathe. What will he do when I open the bathroom door? Will he grab me or hit me? Maybe he'll pull me back into the Charlene's room and torment me some more. It must have been 10 minutes before one of his kids banged on the door. I opened it and ran home. His assault haunted me for many years. No matter how many times I thought about telling mom or anyone else, I couldn't. Craig was my elder, whom I'd been taught to respect. If I told Charlene or mom, they might think I was lying. And if they did believe me, Charlene's world might have fallen apart. That's so much to put on a child that at that time was probably 11 or 12, after the many other assaults that she's already had. She was already too depressed and fragile as it was. I wasn't brave enough to cause her more grief. After the horrible episode, something inside of me became stronger. I turned into what I suppose back then was a rebellious child. The next time Charlene or mom wanted my help, I said no, I have other plans. No matter what they did or said, no one could persuade or bribe me back into that sick and subservient situation. Never again would I stay overnight at Aunt Marianne's either. What, for heaven's sake, took me so long to realize that mom wouldn't know where I slept, whether I was at home, at the neighbors, in a tent, or in a field. After Craig molested me, I slept back at our house in mom's bed unless dad was sleeping with her instead of another wife. I knew no one could make me change my mind without a physical fight. No one ever tried. My deepest dreams during those years were to be able to survive in the mountains. I would live with the animals where no one could ever treat me badly. I wouldn't have to go to school or feel stupid anymore. I fantasized a normal life, a dad, one mom, and one family. And I wish with all my heart that God could never hear me think wicked things like that. Good for her. She does a lot of blaming of herself, but she was a kid and it wasn't her responsibility. This lands on the sick people that surrounded her and the teaching of this religion. Chapter 10, New Friends, Mother and Siblings, 1963. In Mom's bedroom, I gazed at her long, old-fashioned underwear. Like most adult members of our fundamentalist church, she wore long garments, which were as sacrosanct. No, that's wrong. SACROSANCT as life itself. Mom and dad had started wearing them when they were married in Logan Temple 47 years earlier. All of the markings on their garments had a special purpose and meaning. The thin lace tie that held the front closed, the stitch markings over each nipple, the abnormally large collar, and the gaping crescent-shaped opening in the pelvic and buttock area all carried significance. For my parents, dressing and undressing were ceremonial events. Mother would ceremoniously slide her right foot in one leg and then her left foot in the other. She pulled the one-piece garment up over her body, put her right arm and then her left arm into the long sleeves and guided them over her shoulders, then pulled the garment around her chest and tied it shut. Before she could put her slip and dress on, she put her bra and underpants over top of her garments. Then she would meticulously fold up the legs of the garment from her ankles to a few inches below her knees to prevent the garment's legs from sliding below the hem of her mid-calf length dress. She used tiny gold pins to hold them in place. Afterward, she repeat the same process with each sleeve so they too would stay hidden underneath her three-quartered sleeved dress. No one should ever divulge the meaning of these symbols, Mother replied whenever I asked her to tell me what they were about. But I will tell you what I can, Sophia, is garments are an extraordinary blessing to those of us who have been through the temple and have had our work done. The garments will protect us from harm and evil, and it makes me sad I can't wear them down to my ankles and wrists the way I'm supposed to. So this item of clothing is supposed to protect them. I hope God will forgive me for folding them up to hide them, but if I don't, they'll be seen by those who don't understand and will criticize them. To let others ridicule at my garments would be like casting pearls before swine. Mother sadly complained about the LDS Church doing away with most of the lengthy temple ceremonies and the long garments. Originally, the temple ordinances took nearly 2 full days to complete, she said. Now I hear the ceremonies just take a few hours. The modern day garments have been reduced to a short sleeve top and pants cut off below the knee. They've also discarded some of the significant markings. It's just one more way the LDS Church keeps changing and deleting the sacred teachings of Joseph Smith. God's laws don't change, Ma would say again and again. Someday Jesus and Joseph will come back to this earth and set things in order. Lord, Jesus and Joseph. They will perform plural marriages and all of the ordinances in the temple and reinstate other tenets the LDS Church authorities have forsaken. Meanwhile, we must always keep in mind, Sophia, where much is given, much is expected. I was sure I'd never be worthy to wear those garments. Even if I were worthy, I knew they would not protect me. Nothing or no one had thus far. And if I ever qualified to wear those long, thick garments, I was sure I'd die from heat exhaustion. I could never tell Mom how I really felt about her garments because it would hurt her feelings. And just like everything else I'd done in my life, I'd wear garments for her sake, Dad's sake, even for God's sake, if I really had to. It was already torturous to have to wear dresses to school every day and all day long on Sundays. All I ever wanted was to wear a blouse and a pair of Levi's. Then I could be physically free to soar. Guilt had been plaguing me for 2 long days and nights ever since I tended our neighbor's children. The parents had told me I could have all of the chocolates I wanted, so I did. Those delicious morsels right there in my face kept begging and forcing me to eat them. One more, they call out to me. Oh, come on, just one more. We're so delicious. Have another one. When the adults returned, the candy bowl was completely empty. Most were in my stomach and the rest were in my coat pocket. The kids and I ate them while we watched a movie. I lied. I really didn't steal them, I told myself. After all, they did say I could have all I wanted. But inside, I knew such conduct wasn't polite. I'd never been so embarrassed, and I hated myself. I'd been taught and drilled on how to lie. Dishonesty had become second nature to me. I felt guilty, but I wasn't sure how to stop lying. Half the time, I couldn't keep track of all the untruths I had to tell to protect the predators in my life versus the fibs that would just pop up out of my mouth. Some lies were just plain wrong. So I forbade myself to ever lie again. But at my young age, my brain and heart were not strong enough to stop my perjuring mouth. It was a given. I would someday burn in hell. The following Friday afternoon, Carol took me to her house so she could teach me how to sew. Surely it was because she decided I needed a new dress. I packed my clothes, a peanut butter sandwich, and a pocket full of candy just in case. I wanted to look just like Carol. She was short, brown-eyed, petite woman. Her husband wasn't very large, but he looked huge next to her. This beautiful young couple, who were converts to the Allred group, mesmerized me with their southern drawl. Carol fixed one of the most fabulous meals I'd ever tasted. My stomach was totally satisfied when I settled on her couch bed in front of a large picture window. In my nightmare, I relived something that had happened a few weeks earlier on my way home from school. Rocks pelted my arms and back. Plig, plig, stupid little plig girl. The boys mocked as they chased me towards home. No matter how fast I ran, my body felt as if it were barely moving across the ground. As the neighborhood bullies closed in on me, I could feel them grasp my back and neck. Just in the nick of time, I screamed myself awake. I wiped the tears and the sweat from my face with my arm and unwrapped my pink flannel nightgown that was twisted around my legs. My bladder felt like it would burst, but I couldn't get up. It had crossed my mind earlier to ask Carol to leave a night light on, but my embarrassment and pride wouldn't let me, and there was no way I dared go anywhere in the dark. I was pathetically afraid of everything. Again, I chastised myself for being a 10-year-old wimp. If Carol really knew what a pathetic little girl I was, she wouldn't have invited me over in the first place, I thought. The rest of the chocolates were right next to me in my sack. I scarfed down every last piece and hid the wrappers under my things. Then, gorged, but feeling miserably consoled, I fell back to sleep. I dreamed the bathroom light was on, so I hurried in to relieve myself. I went several times again and again. Oh, Lord, she was peeing on herself in the bed all night long. But as the sunlight started to creep through the curtains, I still had to go to the bathroom. I pulled up my nightgown and sat down on the toilet. Within seconds, I woke to a warm sensation on my thighs around my buttocks and drenching the sheets. I was mortified. Now what will I say or do? Girl, don't worry. We've all been there. Any of you ever had one of those dreams? I know I've had a dream before where I thought I was in the bathroom and I started to go and I woke myself up. And yeah, I was, running and going. It's TMI. Sorry, y'all. I'm just saying, I think at some point, she's young. We've all had those dreams at some point. There was no lie on this earth that could protect me from this unpleasant disgrace. I had wet the bed too many times for too many years. I promised myself, okay, y'all do realize that bedwetting is one sign of abuse. Not to say that just because you wet the bed that this is something that happens, but that's one of the signs that they do have of abuse. I promised myself I'd never sleep overnight anywhere until I stopped wetting the bed for good. But my vow didn't help me feel a single bit better, and I had no choice but to confess by accident to Carol. Humiliated, I tried to explain my fears about my dream. She promised me everything was just fine. At the fabric shop, Carol told me to choose any cotton material I wanted. The dark pink material with the bright blue, green, yellow, and purple nickel-sized polka dots was beautiful. She picked out a spool of matching thread and a pattern for a size 12A line dress. Carol smiled sweetly. Sophia, you are a beautiful young girl. If you will eat better food and get more exercise, we'll buy you a size 6 or a size 8 pattern next time. In other words, lose some weight and we'll be able to treat you to a smaller size. I get it. That was a nice way to put it, though, I guess. How could I get more exercise? I wanted to know. I already ran everywhere. I went from school, up and down our stairs, and nearly every day after school. Still, Carol was right. Even my dad let me know in his well-meaning way, if you weren't so active, Sophia, you and our cows would be the same size by now. That's not nice. My homemade dress turned out to be perfect and beautiful. I was extremely grateful to Carol, but even her goodness couldn't erase my insecurities about my weight and bedwetting. Because I was so self-conscious and humiliated, I couldn't even speak to Carol after the dress was finished and she took me home. Sometimes before or after Sunday meetings, she would smile at me from across the room, and I hope she understood why I avoided her. After all these years, I can still see her kind, smiling face. I'm sure I didn't adequately appreciate her efforts back then, but a few years later, I came to understand the importance of what she had done for me. From her, I learned how to sew. As years passed, I sewed everything from denim jackets to wedding dresses. She and her husband didn't stay in the all-wear group long. So many families came and went. Wherever Carol is in this vast, wide world, I wish I could give her a big hug and thank her for her wonderful gift to me and for her treating me with such kindness. That's sweet. 4th and 5th grade students got to volunteer in the cafeteria. If we worked there, we could have free hot lunches. As always, I had the same old dry, whole wheat sandwiches made with homemade cheese or peanut butter. Those lunches have become so revolting, I always look forward to my turn to help in the lunchroom. As in previous years, I watch my peers eat or waste their lunches. Sometimes they devour everything on their trays, or they take only one or two bites before discarding the rest. To pretend I didn't care was nearly impossible. Desperately, I wanted someone to be considerate enough to offer me his or her fruit, dessert, or yummy looking white bread. If it were the other way around, I thought, I would have offered any extra food to them or even shared what I had, but my peers were always in a predicament. They couldn't pay attention to me. A plig kid is an outcast, even if they wanted to. That would have required risking their relationship with their classmates. I understood. It was much too scary for them. The best part about fall canning season, as my family always called it, was we got to have fresh fruit or vegetables in our lunches. During this time, all of Dad's kids, even the younger ones, became assembly line workers for weeks on end. From the second we got home from school until late at night, we helped peel, core, and cut the produce. We stuff it into hundreds of pint or quart bottles. Aunt Eleanor, Marianne, or Mom would wipe the tops off, tighten the lids, and place the bottles in a huge vat of hot water on top of our coal stove. Once the food had boiled for an allotted time, the jars were removed. As the jars cooled down, each lid made loud popping sounds. To us, it was the satisfactory proof our food storage was sufficiently sealed before it would be placed on the shelves in the fruit room space I wanted to be mine. Almost every day, I daydreamed of having a space of my very own. Even a tiny spot would be better than nothing. I'd go down the long flight of steps and slip into the fruit room under the staircase. There, I'd envision what wondrous things I could do with the tiny space under a shelf. Sometimes I'd stand outside on Mom's 6 by 8 foot front porch and wish for that space. Even in our huge new garage, where meetings were now held, I longed for a corner, even a tent or a hut. If only I had a small space of my own, it would be heaven. I never thought about how, grateful I should be for my upbringing, because here she is just wanting a little sliver of space. And I never had to share a room except for summertime. But that was because we were all at my grandma's or something like that. But I never had to share a room growing up. An older cousin, Kenneth, moved his family back to Salt Lake City area from Pinesdale, Montana. His family had lived on the massive ranch the All Red Group had purchased in the early 60s. Luckily for me, he relocated his second wife and her 2 daughters in Murray, fairly close to us. Kenneth's oldest daughter, Valerie, and I began to hang out together. She was the first true friend I ever had. To me, Valerie's mother was perfect. On weekends, she took us swimming and shopping. Sometimes she played games and visited with us. Valerie and her little sister always had chores and piano lessons. It seemed they were the only girls with perfect mother-daughter relationships, at least until Aunt Amelia came along. Several years earlier, Amelia and her 3 children had moved from the LeBaron Group in Mexico to California and then to Salt Lake City. Prior to that, she had corresponded with my parents and planned to join our group. Before long, Amelia's oldest daughter, Amy, and I became almost inseparable. The first time Amy came into our house, my mom was wearing her nurse uniform and making her bed. When I first went to Amy's house, her grandmother was wearing a white pinafore apron and dusting the living room. A short time later, we discovered each of us had assumed the other's family was wealthy enough to have a maid. We laughed and laughed at our mistake, since both of our families were as poor as paupers. One of the best days of my adolescent years was when Amy's mom brought my little sister Jolene with her and called Amy and me down from the massive weeping willow tree in Aunt Marianne's front yard. Hey girls, I have a great big surprise for you. I want to tell you girls you have a new sister. Aunt Amelia gathered her arms around Jolie and me. With a soft, kind voice, she whispered, I married your dad. Then she hugged Amy tightly. I married my good friend Owen. Now you have a whole bunch of sisters and brothers. We jumped up and down and screamed in delight. I was ecstatic and crazy with joy. My new friend Amy, who was only 6 months older than me, had suddenly become my sister, and I had a new mother who had already begun to treat me like gold. Oh, that's awesome. Are we finally going to get somebody to treat her right? This is going to be great if we're finally going to see something after all that this young lady has been through, that she's going to have somebody who treats her like she matters. But that is the end of those 2 chapters. Let me know what you think down below. I can't wait to find out what happens to all of these different individuals that she's telling us about that assaulted her. I'm going to have to put a trigger warning on this one because that was a little descriptive in nature. It seems like in almost every chapter, something is happening to her, which sucks. You all let me know what you think. Please like the video, comment, and subscribe. We're on the road to 2,000. Yes, you heard me right, 2,000. It's going to happen. Until next time.